Hi, I'm Michelle Ockers. Welcome to what I learned in April 2019. The first thing I'd like to talk about is evidence-informed practice, and I'll start with learning myths and then move on to evidence-informed practice. I posted on LinkedIn during the month about learning myths and asked people to share ideas and practices that were perpetuated in learning and development, yet were not based on any solid evidence or research, and in effect were myths. That generated a lot of interest with over 100 comments. But towards the end, someone commented, great, we've all spent a lot of time talking about learning myths. How about we flip the discussion and talk about practices that are grounded in research and evidence and how we go about using those. Now, the conversation didn't then continue, and I'm going to post separately on that on LinkedIn and see where I can take that conversation in the coming month. But it did tie in with and it kind of attuned me to be looking out for more around evidence-informed practice. Coincidentally, a lady called Catherine Lombardozzi, hello Catherine, reached out to me from the US. She's been in my network for some time, but we've never spoken, and we had an initial discussion online. And Catherine has done a lot of work around evidence-informed practice. She calls it scholarly practice just because of the field that she's done most of her work in. It's a term that applies there. But she's curated some great resources, so I would encourage you to go and have a look at her page of curated resources, which I'll share, but she gives some suggestions for how to use evidence as part of your work as a learning professional. A couple of the ideas from Catherine that stood out for me were deliberately searching literature for relevant ideas when we've got strategic initiatives to support, looking for or producing and sharing the research evidence to support our activities or practices, and also applying research skills in our own work to test the effectiveness of our activities. That ties in with what I spoke about in last month's What I Learned video about data analytics and the importance for learning professionals to have some data analytics skills. It's about doing your own research. Towards the end of the month, I came across an article from Miriam Nealon which tied in with this theme. And her article was about evidence-informed learning experience design. Now, I've picked up this term evidence-informed rather than evidence-based from Miriam. And she talks about the distinction in that evidence-based practice comes from clinical practice and is very much grounded in medicine and relies on certain processes, practices and very high standards around the scientific aspects of the research. Whereas evidence-informed practice, whilst also based on scientific research, is in the field of learning sciences, but there's a lot more murkiness and muddiness to this branch of evidence and research because we're dealing with people and there's lots of variables that are hard to control. However, she did say it need not be intimidating, and her post gives some good tips for how to use an evidence-informed approach in learner experience design. So I'm going to keep kind of following this rabbit trail around evidence-informed practice. What does good evidence-informed practice look like, and what sort of sources can you draw on? One, of course, of those is gathering evidence as part of your own practice, which is certainly something that Miriam alludes to and something that Catherine suggested. So thank you to both of those ladies for their contributions and for sharing so generously on evidence-informed practice. Second thing I wanted to talk about is a metaphor for learning culture, which I picked up from Nigel Payne. I'm going to be running some workshops on building learning culture with Nigel in Australia and New Zealand in August, and we ran a webinar in April. I read his book, Workplace Learning, earlier this year and was really taken with the idea of a gyroscope as a metaphor for learning culture. I'll put a link to a little video if you're not sure what a gyroscope is or how it operates. There's a video which explains how this fascinating little piece of equipment functions and the value of it. But what I really loved was the way Nigel brought to life this analogy. You see a gyroscope when it's not in motion, when it's not spinning, doesn't have anything special about it. It won't hover, it won't move, it won't stay stable, it just kind of sits. But once you get a gyroscope spinning, there's this energy that's set up that allows it to stay stable and maintain a forward momentum, even though things might be changing in the environment around it, even if you try to tip it, it will regain its balance and keep moving and keep spinning. If you put it on a slope, it will still keep spinning and respond to the forces outside to maintain some stability and momentum. And this analogy helps you shift your sense of, or your perspective about learning culture. Learning culture is really about the energy within an organisation, the flow of knowledge, the collaboration within an organisation that allows it to move, to maintain momentum, as well as stability in response to things changing in the external environment. It's a really exciting metaphor. And the final thing I want to share is a neat little tool. I need to acknowledge that I learned about this tool from a Tech Taster webinar that I attended that the Institute for Learning Professionals here in Australia ran during the month. It's a voice transcription tool called Otter, O-T-T-E-R. You can get it at Otter.ai, link on my website. And basically you can get up to 600 hours of free voice recording per month. You simply go to Otter.ai on your phone, set up an account, free account, and you hit record when you want to record a conversation. So I have used it to record online meetings this month. I've used it to play back a podcast where I was interviewed, but a transcript hadn't been produced, so I was able to create a transcript. I've used it to create transcripts from some other videos that I had where I didn't have a transcript. It works really well. It's really simple. It probably had about 85% accuracy, and everything is then available. The transcripts are then immediately available online for you to download in a range of formats and do your final edit on and reuse. Great little tool.